setting new standards in podcast excellence. You have joined the WBT, fully focused on business and taxes. Here is your host, Michael Lodge.
Welcome. This is Michael Lodge. I'm glad that you've joined me. Another beautiful day here in South Florida. However, we have a tropical storm heading our way. And it's going to get wet, which is okay. I like wet. Wet's fine. Makes everything nice and green, washes everything down, does exactly what rain is supposed to do, what Mother Nature wants it to do for all of us. And that is clean out that air. Wash it down. Wash that COVID right out of our lives. Hopefully. So our conversation today is directed to you landlords and tenants, okay? Because a lot of these city and state moratoriums are coming to an end. And you're going to have to start paying that rent at some point in time, or you landlords are going to have to start paying your mortgage at some point in time. But you need to be able to sit down and mediate, and that's why we have tenant mediation going on all the time. I'm doing tenant mediation from Florida all the way to Seattle, so almost all across the United States. But it's a good mechanism for everyone to use, because there's going to be some emotional strain here, financial strain, and mental health strain. And the best way to do it is talking through a mediator. But I want to go through some things that you can do maybe on your own besides using a mediator. And that is, so we're going to talk about some helpful pointers, because it's really important to know what you can do as an individual. Now, some of you might be too shy. Some of you might not know how to negotiate. Some of you might think, I'll just hire a mediator to help me out. The first thing that you need to do is calm down. Okay, just calm down. With every problem, with every situation, there is a resolution. There is a way to solve a problem. So let's start by what we need to start thinking about as we begin this mediation or discussion process with tenants and landlords. Number one is to figure out ahead of time exactly what you want to happen. Same thing in mediation. You need to be able to tell the mediator exactly what you would like out of this mediation. And you need to be able to tell that to the other side. So you have to be very clear on the story that you're going to tell the mediator and the other side. So part of that story is, do you want to stay, or do you want out of your lease, or will you be satisfied with a sincere apology and pledge to do better? And can you trust the landlord, and can you trust the tenant to stick to their promises? And where are you willing to compromise? And what's your bottom line? So you need to think about those aspects of what you want out of the mediation, and what you want out of your discussions between the landlord and the tenant. It's both sides now, okay? Both of you have got to be looking at that and thinking about that. Then you need to set up an appointment time to discuss the problem. If you want to sit down and arrange a quiet time and place, preferably in a neutral location, where you can both express your concerns and work out an agreement, then mediation is the best place, because everything's confidential. Nothing is legally posted in any type of newspaper about the transaction that's happening between you two. If you went to court, everything would be public information. But at least with what's really good about mediation is that it's confidential. And it's neutral. You have a neutral third party coming in, working with each side. Then you need to let the landlord vent. If the landlord needs to get off the steam, he's upset, he's pissed off, let him vent. Once the landlord starts talking, I want you to listen very closely and don't interrupt. Even if some points are not true, don't interrupt. Or some opinions are inflammatory, don't interrupt. Letting them get their version of on the table, they're going to tell their story. Remember, I always tell you guys, be prepared to tell your story and be prepared to listen to a story. So you need to listen to that very carefully. Letting them vent, letting them get their version of their story on the table. And if you listen and if you don't interrupt, that is giving a good indication that you're willing to listen and that you're willing to compromise, you're willing to negotiate. So that's one of the very important first steps that you need to really be thinking on, is listening to the other side. Listening to the landlord and listening to the tenant. Both of you. Don't interrupt each other. Let each other talk. Then you can formulate your argument to come back with. State that you are interested and respect the landlord's key points, okay? That's because you're going to listen to what he's saying, and you're going to listen to the tenant what they're saying, so you need to listen to each other and respect each other's key points. And a lot of times, I'm going to tell you this right now, when I have my people that are mediating with me, my clients mediating with me in front, I always have them list out what their issues are and what they want to discuss. And you would be surprised that about 80% are exactly what the other person is saying, but they're saying it in a different way. Listen to the key points to both sides. Be respectful. Listen. And then you'll be able to do your talking later on. And the most important thing, because this is such an emotional situation, you need to avoid personal attacks. Even if it's true, avoid it. Suggesting that your landlord is a slumlord or is profiteering at the expense of tenants will only raise the level of hostility and make settlement even more difficult. And the same thing goes back to landlord to tenant. If you're going to accuse them of being a slime ball and everything else, it's going to make it very difficult to get to a settlement or get to a solution. Equally important, it's usually best to stay calm and not to react impulsively or emotionally to the landlord or the tenant's misstatements. It's hard to do, I know, but I've seen these people and they just want to burst it out, and I say, hold back, listen. Be courteous, but don't be weak, okay? If the law is on your side, or you have the firm backing of most other tenants or most other landlords, let the other party know that you're coming from a position of strength. Make it clear that you prefer negotiation and negotiating an agreement, but if necessary, you have the resources and evidence to fight and win in a legal situation. If the issue concerns the landlord's failure or the tenant's failure to follow the state code or local code or the local laws, consider equipping yourself with a copy of the law, which you can show to each other. If you have a good argument, and it's a good legal argument, use it. But don't get emotional about it. State it clearly, precisely, and show them the law. I know it's difficult to think about all this stuff, but you have to, because you have to use some common sense when you're trying to negotiate with either side, a tenant or a landlord, and you have to be very common sense oriented. But you also have to look at the law that protects you. Do your due diligence. You can do your due diligence. That's what we have all of this material and content that is distributed throughout the internet. It's all out there. Even the very codes that you need to use to substantiate your argument. And then I really want you to think about this. You have to emphasize your problem solving. Try to structure the negotiation as a mutual attempt to solve a problem. For instance, if you're complaining about the landlord's policy of entering your apartment to make unannounced repairs, seek solutions that recognize the interests of both parties. For example, an understanding that repairs are necessary and even desirable, but that most can be pre-arranged. That was as an example. You're going to be talking about, as you do these landlord-tenant disputes or mediation, you're going to be talking about contract and dollar amounts that are owed and how they need to get paid for. So you need to emphasize problem solving to those issues. Remember, we have already talked that you have to make a decision before you go in. What is going to be your game plan? Do you want to stay? Do you want to not do, or do you not want to stay? Or do you want to end the lease? Or do you want to continue on? And how are you going to pay for the months that you have missed? What is your financial budget to get there? Because you're going to have to pay it because you're under contract. You're under contract. Now, both of you, tenant and landlord, I'm speaking to both of you. Put yourself in the other person's shoes, okay? How would you want to work with an unhappy tenant if roles were reversed? Or how would you want to work with a landlord that is unhappy because you haven't paid your rent, so now the role is reversed? Think about how that other individual is thinking and feeling. It's most important. Put yourself in the other person's shoes and understand the issues that they're dealing with. I'm telling you, everything can be resolved. But you have to be willing to follow these steps, listen, be courteous, be open to opportunities, whatever it takes to sit there and negotiate a fair term for both sides. If you reach an understanding with your landlord or your tenant, promptly write it down and sign it. And that's why in mediation we do a memorandum of understanding so that both sides understand what they just agreed to, and then they both sign it. And that becomes the working point that you can continue on with your relationship, tenant-landlord relationship. But it takes work by both of you, not just one side. It happens with both of you. Listen very carefully. Be prepared to negotiate calmly. And be prepared to resolve an issue and look at the opportunities and the options that are available. Come to the mediation with some options of what you feel that you can and cannot do. Tenant, landlord, same thing. That's what it's so important. Now, a lot of you are scared about this whole process because you haven't been able to meet your payments for 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 months. And maybe you're still going to have some hard time because you have a situation where work is not full-time or it's been eliminated and you're just trying to survive. If you don't have that communication, if you don't sit down with a mediator or with the tenant and the landlord present, you're going to be hiding behind doors. You're going to be doing whatever it takes to ignore the situation, but you need to face it head on. The faster you resolve the issue, the better you are going to be as a person. Let me tell you, everybody has suffered with mental health situations during this lockdown and COVID virus and everything else. And the mental health comes from being under stress. But a lot of that can be resolved if you sit down and talk it out. That's what it's so important. You gotta sit down and talk it out, and that's why mediation is the best way. Now, I want to tell you that there are some cities that offer free tenant mediation. Look to see whether or not if your city doesn't have it. I know that San Jose has it, New York City has it, and I think that that's the only ones I know at the moment. I'm sure there are more out there, but look to see if your city does not offer free mediation between tenant and landlord. Otherwise, the best approach is to the best approach is to hire a mediation person and let them help you through the process. I'm telling you, there is an answer to everything. Everything can be resolved, but you have to be willing to sit down and talk and to mediate and negotiate what you need and what you want to happen with your situation between the landlord and the tenant, or the tenant and the landlord. It can be done. So I want you to really think about this, because a lot of you are going to be hit with it within the next few days. Be proactive in it. Don't go into hiding. Don't be scared. Be proactive. You're not the only one in this situation. It can be resolved. Listen, if you have any questions or concerns, send a text to me at 818-252-5682. Again, that's 818-252-5682. Tenant-landlord relationships are important. Don't hide. Be proactive. Mediate. This is Mike Lodge. I'll talk with you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the WBT with Michael Lodge. Join us again tomorrow as we explore more about business and taxes. Follow us on iHeartRadio and go to our podcast website at www.wbtpod.com and listen to all of our podcasts and read our blogs.
This podcast has been produced by Michael Lodge, fully focused on content.